The bell above the diner door rang like a warning. It was 6:59 a.m., the hour when the city was half awake and fully hungry, when people wanted coffee strong enough to forgive yesterday and eggs hot enough to make today feel possible. Inside Sunrise Spoon Diner, the air was thick with bacon grease, burnt toast, and the kind of tension that makes even the clink of a fork sound loud. At the counter, a young black server named Kiana Holt poured coffee with a hand that tried to look steady and failed by a teaspoon. Her uniform was clean, but her eyes weren't. There were shadows under them that no concealer could cover, because you can't paint over sleepless nights and fear. A white man in a pressed button-down stood at the register with a clipboard held like a judge's gavel. Brent Caldwell, the manager, the man who made this place feel like a trap. He leaned toward Kiana, lips thin with disdain. "You people always have some problem," he said, voice loud enough for the room. "Always late, always broke, always acting like the world owes you something." Kiana's jaw tightened. She had learned to keep her expression flat. No anger, no tears, no anything that could be used as a weapon. "I'm sorry," she said. "The bus." Brent's hand snapped out like a whip. Crack! The slap hit her cheek so hard it turned her head. A spoon fell from her apron and bounced twice on the tile. For a moment, the diner didn't breathe. A construction worker mid-bite froze with a forkful of hash browns hovering near his mouth. Two nurses in wrinkled scrubs stared over their coffee cups. A retired couple in the corner booth sat perfectly still, like moving would make them part of it. Kiana's cheek flushed red. She blinked fast, as if her lashes could push back the sting. Brent leaned in, close enough that his breath touched her skin. "Tip jar had 80, he hissed. "Now it's 40. Where's my money?" "I didn't take it," Kiana whispered. Brent's smile was a neat little blade. "You're calling me a liar?" "No, sir." He grabbed her wrist and twisted, hard enough that pain shot up her arm. Kiana made a small sound she tried to swallow. "Listen," Brent said, still loud enough that people could hear without trying. "I can make one call and end your little life. You know that, right?" Kiana's eyes flicked toward the booth by the window, where a small boy sat with legs swinging, wearing a jacket too thin for February. Miles, 6 years old, her son, clutching a crumpled coloring page like it was armor. Next to him sat his sister, Aaliyah, 9, trying to pretend she wasn't listening, eyes fixed on the sugar packets. Brent followed Kiana's glance and chuckled. "Ah," he said, "you brought your babies to work again? Cute." Kiana's breath snagged. "Please," she murmured. My sitter didn't show. Just for an hour." Brent leaned closer, voice dropping into something poisonous and private. "You want me to call that caseworker again?" he whispered. "Tell her you're bringing kids into a workplace during business hours? Tell her you can't keep stable childcare." Kiana's face went pale. "Don't," she said, barely moving her lips. Brent's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Close tonight," he said, back to the loud voice. "Midnight. Then open tomorrow at 4. And don't be late." "That's only—" He shoved her against the counter, hard enough to rattle the condiment caddies. "That's what you get when you make me repeat myself." Kiana clutched the edge of the counter. She forced air into her lungs like she was pulling it through a straw. "Now smile," Brent said. "Customers don't want to see your attitude." Kiana tried. Her mouth trembled like it didn't know how. Brent released her wrist with a flick, as if she'd dirted his hand. Kiana stumbled toward the kitchen, wiping her cheek with the back of her palm. Nobody moved to help her. Nobody said a word. Nobody, except the man in the corner booth. He looked ordinary in a way that made him invisible. Faded hoodie, baseball cap pulled low, plain jeans, cheap glasses. The kind of customer Brent never noticed, because Brent only looked at people who could threaten him. The man's coffee sat untouched. His eyes did not. Under the table, his phone was angled just right, recording every slap, every threat, every cruel word about a caseworker. And near the window, in the first row of morning light, a black old woman sat alone with a cup of tea, hands folded, watching the room like she'd seen too many versions of this scene to be surprised. She rose slowly, like time belonged to her. She crossed the diner with a calm that made people instinctively shrink back, as if her quiet carried weight. She stopped at the man's booth. She leaned down, and she whispered something so soft only he could hear. The effect was instant. The man went still. Not the stillness of fear, something deeper, colder. His fingers froze around the edge of the table. His jaw clenched. His eyes sharpened like a blade being drawn. Whatever she said didn't scare him. It woke him. The old woman straightened, patted the tabletop once, and walked to the door. The bell chimed as she left. The man didn't move for 3 breaths. Then he set his phone in his pocket, slid out of the booth, and walked to the counter. His voice was quiet. "Hi," he said politely. "Can I order toast?" "Wheat toast. Butter on the side." Brent didn't even look up. "Sit down," he snapped. "Someone will get to you." The man nodded like he'd been trained to obey. He returned to the corner booth. But now his eyes were locked on the office door. And Sunrise Spoon Diner had no idea that within 24 hours, the same room that stayed silent during a slap would become the place where truth finally got loud. At 2:14 a.m., in a hotel room 800 miles from Detroit, Darius King stared at his phone until the screen blurred. His daughter Jada stood in a school auditorium holding a gold ribbon, smiling so bright it made his chest ache. Behind her, a banner read, "Science Expo Winners." The timestamp was cruel, 6:37 p.m. He'd missed it. Again. His suitcase lay open on the bed. A suit hung from the closet door. A conference schedule sat on the desk. Keynote speaker, Darius King, ethical business in modern America. People applauded him for being a visionary. Nobody applauded his daughter when he wasn't there. Darius swiped to another photo. 9 years ago, grand opening of Sunrise Spoon Diner. He was younger, his smile bigger. Beside him stood his mother, Miss Loretta, in a yellow dress, laughing like she could outshine the open sign in the window. 3 months after that photo, Miss Loretta died. Heart failure. Sudden, brutal, unfair. She collapsed in a church kitchen while volunteering to feed people who had nowhere else to go. The doctors said she'd been having chest pains for weeks, but she didn't want to make a fuss. Darius remembered the hospital room. White sheets, beep of machines, the smell of antiseptic and fear. His mother's hand had gripped his like she was trying to anchor him. "Baby," she whispered, voice thin but fierce. "When you feed folks, you feed them with dignity. Not pity, not power. Dignity." Darius had promised. He built Sunrise Spoon on that promise. Detroit had taught him what it meant to be overlooked. He watched factories close, families scatter. People become invisible after one mistake, one felony, one bad break. He wanted to build a place where the invisible could become seen again. He hired single mothers with gaps in their work history, returning citizens fresh off parole, people rebuilding from zero. The local paper wrote a feel-good story. Then the business magazines called. Then the invitations started coming like a flood. Panels, workshops, awards. Darius told himself the travel mattered because it spread the mission, and because he wasn't leaving the diner unprotected. He had Brent Caldwell. Brent showed up 5 years ago with a clean resume and a smile that could sell a lie. He talked about efficiency. He said all the right things about helping people and community. Darius hired him as a shift supervisor. Brent learned quickly. Too quickly. The numbers improved. Waste went down. Schedules ran tighter. Darius promoted him, then promoted him again. When Darius began traveling more, Brent sent weekly reports. All green. Team stable. Profits steady. "You're good, boss." So why did Darius wake up with a knot in his stomach every time his phone buzzed? The first warning came from his accountant. Labor costs climbing, but revenue flat. Then an anonymous message appeared in his inbox. "Come see your place. You're not going to like what you find." Then the text started. Different numbers. Same message. "Check your people." Darius tried calling back. Disconnected. One night, in Chicago, his phone buzzed again. "Order toast. Watch the office door. You'll understand." Darius stared at the words until his pulse thudded in his ears. He typed, "Who are you?" No answer. The next message came 10 minutes later. "She'll recognize you if you walk in as yourself. Be invisible." Darius didn't sleep after that. He booked a flight home. He didn't tell Brent. He didn't warn anyone. Because if something was wrong, he needed to see it without performance, without masks. He packed an old hoodie, a faded cap, cheap glasses, and a jacket he didn't care about. He looked in the mirror and practiced looking forgettable. Right before he left, another text arrived. "Thank you for coming home." Darius swallowed hard. Then he whispered into the darkness of the hotel room, as if his mother could hear him through time. "I'm coming." Darius landed at 6:26 a.m. and checked into a budget motel under a fake name. He spread payroll reports across the bed like evidence at a trial. The numbers didn't just look off. They looked staged. Every employee listed at exactly 40 hours. Week after week. No overtime. No variance. In a diner? That was impossible. He remembered Kiana Holt, the single mother he hired 2 years ago. She used to volunteer for extra shifts because she needed the money. Why would she suddenly cap herself at 40? Darius compared Brent's digital schedules to a photo that had been texted to him overnight, a snapshot of the physical schedule board in the kitchen. The discrepancy made his stomach drop. The board showed 55 hours. Payroll showed 40. Somebody was shaving hours. Somebody was stealing wages. And if someone was stealing wages from people with nothing, they were stealing food from children. Darius drove to the diner at 6:55 a.m., pulled his cap low, put on cheap glasses. He walked in, and he watched. The slap, the threats, the tip jar, the way the whole room stayed silent. Because silence is what people learn when power feels dangerous. Then the old woman whispered, and Darius froze. Because she didn't whisper his name. She whispered something else. Something that landed like a hammer against his ribs. "Your mama didn't die for this." Darius couldn't breathe for a second. His mother's face flashed in his mind. Yellow dress, laughter, the smell of cinnamon on her hands. "Your mama didn't die for this." The old woman's eyes had been calm, but her words were fire. Then she added softer, "Stop watching. Start protecting." And she walked out. Darius sat there, jaw clenched because she was right. Recording mattered, but it wasn't enough. Not if kids were watching their mother get humiliated for rent money. Not if people were being held hostage with fear. He ordered toast because the text told him to, and because he needed to stay calm. He needed Brent to keep ignoring him. He needed to see the system. Brent moved through the diner like he owned the air. He smiled at customers with money and scowled at staff with nothing. He stopped at the counter, reached into the tip jar, counted bills, and slid 2 20s into his pocket like it was routine. Kiana returned from the kitchen with a tray, her cheeks still red, eyes down. A customer at booth 3 left a 5 on the table. Kiana cleared the dishes, fingers trembling as she picked up the bill and tucked it into her apron pocket. Brent appeared beside her like a shadow. "Tip pool," he said, palm open. Kiana hesitated for half a heartbeat. Brent's eyes narrowed. Kiana pulled the bill out and handed it to him. Her face was blank, but her shoulders screamed defeat. Darius's hands clenched under the table. A cook emerged at the pass-through window. Trey Lawson, arms tattooed, burns across his knuckles from hot pans. He was one of the returning citizens Darius hired 3 years ago. Good worker. Quiet. Proud. Brent snapped his fingers. "Trey. Front." Trey stepped out, wiping his hands. His posture stiffened the second he saw Brent's face. "Yes, sir." Brent held up a paycheck stub like an accusation. "You've been complaining," Brent said loudly. "About your hours." Trey swallowed. I worked more than 40, Trey said carefully. "The schedule." Brent leaned in, voice dripping with false patience. "Time clock says 40. "The time clock." Trey started, then stopped. Because he understood the trap. If he argued, Brent would make it about attitude, about defiance, about untrustworthy behavior. Brent smiled wider. "You wanted to call your parole officer again?" he asked softly. Trey's face went pale. Brent patted his shoulder like a friend. "Then let's not create problems, yeah?" Trey nodded once, jaw clenched so tight a muscle jumped. "Yes, sir." He walked back into the kitchen like a man stepping into a cage. Darius's throat tightened. This wasn't just wage theft. It was leverage. It was control. It was a man using people's past like chains. Then the bell chimed again. A little boy in a thin jacket slid off the counter stool and ran toward the door. "Grandma!" Miles shouted. A woman entered, breathless, hair wrapped in a scarf, cheeks red from the cold. She carried a paper bag and a small envelope. Kiana froze. "Ma," she whispered. Kiana's mother looked at her daughter's cheek and went dangerously still. Brent saw the interaction and strolled over smug. "What is this?" he asked. "Family reunion." Kiana's mother lifted her chin. "I brought lunch money for my grandbabies." Brent's smirk sharpened. Maybe if Kiana here wasn't so irresponsible, she wouldn't need rescue. Kiana flinched. Her mother didn't. She stepped closer, touched Kiana's cheek gently, then turned her eyes on Brent like a spotlight. "You put your hands on my child?" she asked. Brent laughed once, dismissive. "Ma'am, don't start." Kiana's mother leaned in slightly. "I'm going to say this once," she said quietly. "Touch her again, and I will testify so loud your name won't survive it." Brent's smile slipped, because he could smell something worse than anger. He could smell certainty. He glanced around for support, but the room was filled with strangers who suddenly looked at him like he was dirt. Brent straightened, eyes narrowing. "This is a business," he snapped. "Get your grandkids out." Kiana gathered her kids, face burning with shame and fear, and her mother guided them out, holding Miles's hand. As they passed Darius's booth, Kiana's mother glanced at him. Her eyes lingered like she recognized something. Darius lowered his gaze. He couldn't risk being noticed. Not yet, because he needed proof strong enough to crush Brent's power completely. At 9:08 a.m., Darius's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Back hallway. Emergency exit. 2 minutes. Darius stood, left cash on the table, and walked toward the restroom sign like he belonged. In the narrow hallway behind the kitchen, a young server waited with eyes that looked older than her face. Monique Saldana. Darius recognized her from an employee photo. She'd been hired a year ago. Quiet, good at her job, always described in Brent's reports as low drama. Her hand shook as she spoke. "You're him," she whispered. "Mr. King." Darius nodded. Monique swallowed hard, then pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. A schedule board in the kitchen. 50-plus hours. Double shifts. Close open. Then a payroll report with neat columns. 40. 40. 40. "We work ourselves sick," Monique whispered. "And then he edits punches. He tells us it's our fault. He says we should be grateful." Darius's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked, voice low. Monique's eyes filled with tears. "He watches everything," she whispered. "He threatened me. My brother. He's not documented." Brent pulled up the tip line on his phone like it was a joke. He smiled. He said, "One call, and my whole family gets torn apart." Darius's stomach turned. "Do you have evidence?" Darius asked. Monique nodded quickly. "Tonight," she whispered. "After close. I made a copy of the office key months ago. I was too scared to use it. But that old lady this morning." Darius blinked. "You saw her?" Monique nodded. "She looked at me like she knew me," Monique whispered. Then she said, "Baby, fear is a chain you can choose to break." Darius's pulse thudded. Monique pressed a small key into his palm. "Bottom drawer," she whispered. "There's a ledger. There's 2 sets of time cards. There's things. Bad things." Darius closed his fingers around the key. "We'll be careful," he said. Monique's voice cracked. "Please don't leave again." Darius met her eyes. "I'm not." Sunrise Spoon closed at 11 p.m. Darius waited in his car, 3 blocks away, watching the alley through the windshield. At 11:41 p.m., his phone buzzed. Back door now. He drove around to the dumpster alley. The light above the trash bins had burned out, leaving the space shadowed and cold. Monique waited by the emergency exit, door propped open with a brick. Her breath came in short clouds. "He left 10 minutes ago," she whispered. "We have maybe 20 minutes before the cleaning crew." They slipped inside. The diner in darkness felt like a different building, quiet, hollow, like a stage after the actors leave. They moved to Brent's office. Monique slid the key in. Click. Darius opened the bottom drawer. 2 stacks of time cards. One labeled payroll, the other labeled actual. He spread them on the desk. Kiana Holt, 68 actual, 40 paid. Trey Lawson, 56 actual, 40 paid. Monique, 54 actual, 40 paid. Page after page, the same crime repeated, clean and ruthless. Then Monique pulled out a black composition notebook. Darius opened it. Brent's handwriting stared back like a confession. Not just numbers. Notes. Threats. Leverage. Kiana, custody file. Remind her caseworker exists. Trey, parole. Mention officer. Monique, brother undocumented. Keep quiet. Darius's hands shook for the first time. This wasn't mismanagement. This was deliberate terror. Monique reached deeper into the drawer and pulled out a folder labeled backup. Inside were forged write-ups, fake incident reports, signatures that looked copied, paper trails designed to crush anyone who spoke up. At the bottom was a document draft that made Darius's stomach drop. A complaint accusing Darius of misconduct, dated 2 weeks earlier. A trap. A weapon. If Darius tried to fire Brent without proof, Brent would burn the whole business down and drag Darius's name with it. Darius photographed everything, carefully, page by page. Monique whispered, "There's more on the computer." She sat at the desk, typed a password. "How do you know it?" Darius asked. "I watched him type it once," Monique whispered. The screen lit up. Vendor contracts, cheap suppliers substituted, premium invoices billed. A spreadsheet titled referrals, employee names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers. A column labeled fee. Brent wasn't just stealing wages. He was selling people. Darius's jaw clenched, so hard it hurt. Monique's eyes were wet. I started getting calls from payday lenders. Trey, too. Kiana said someone threatened her about a debt she never took. Darius took photos until his phone's storage nearly screamed. Then his alarm buzzed, 12:06 a.m. "We have to go," Monique whispered. Darius put everything back exactly as found, locked the drawer, shut down the computer, erased no traces. They slipped out the back door into the cold alley. Monique hugged herself, shaking. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Darius looked at the diner sign, glowing faintly across the lot. "Tomorrow morning," he said, voice steady. "I'll walk in through the front door as myself." Monique's eyes widened. "In front of everyone?" "He humiliated you in front of everyone," Darius said. "He threatened you in front of everyone. He hit Kiana in front of everyone." He paused, remembering the old woman's whisper. Then he said, "So yes, in front of everyone, because silence is how he survived." Monique's breath hitched. "He'll deny it," she whispered. Darius lifted his phone. "He can try." At 7:15 a.m. the next day, Sunrise Spoon was packed again. The bell chimed, and Darius King walked in wearing a dark suit. No disguise, no cap, no cheap glasses. The room recognized him instantly. People whispered his name like a rumor. Kiana, at the coffee station, froze so hard the pot tilted. Coffee spilled across a saucer. Trey peered from the kitchen pass-through, eyes wide. Monique stood by the dish station, hands trembling, but she lifted her chin. Brent emerged from his office, clipboard in hand, smile ready. "Mr. King," Brent said brightly, voice performing. "What a surprise. I didn't know you were." Darius held up a hand. "Everyone," he said calmly. "All staff. Front. Now." Brent blinked. "Sir, we're in the middle of the rush." "Now," Darius repeated, voice still calm, but firm enough to cut through the room. Something in that tone, something that didn't ask, made people move. Servers gathered. Cook stepped out. The dishwasher came forward, wiping hands. Even the teenage busser stopped mid-wipe. Customers watched, silent, sensing something heavy unfolding. Darius stood in the center of the diner. "My name is Darius King," he said. "I own Sunrise Spoon." He let that sit for a heartbeat. 2 mornings ago," Darius continued, "I sat in that corner booth. I watched a manager slap an employee." A ripple went through the crowd. Brent's smile stiffened. "Sir, I can explain." Darius didn't look at him yet. He looked at Kiana. "Kiana," he said gently, "come here." Kiana's hand shook as she stepped forward. "You're not in trouble," Darius said. "You're safe. Do you understand?" Kiana nodded, tears already gathering. "How many hours did you work last week?" Darius asked. Kiana's voice cracked. 68. "And how many did you get paid for?" Darius asked. Kiana swallowed. 40. The diner went still. Darius turned to Trey. "Trey," he said, "how many hours?" Trey's jaw clenched. 56. Paid 40. Darius turned to Monique. 54, Monique said, voice trembling but clear. Paid 40. Darius finally looked at Brent. Brent's eyes were wide now, the performance cracking. There's been confusion, Brent began. Darius lifted his phone and swiped to the first photo, 2 stacks of time cards. No confusion, Darius said. He swiped Brent's ledger. He swiped the spreadsheet of employee information. He swiped vendor kickbacks. He swiped the drafted complaint. Each image was a nail. Brent's face drained of color. Darius's voice stayed steady, which made it terrifying. You stole wages, Darius said. You edited time records. You pocketed tips. You threatened employees with parole officers, caseworkers, and immigration. Brent stepped back, palms up. This is ridiculous. A woman at booth 6 stood suddenly. I saw him hit her, she said loudly. Another customer spoke up. And I heard the foster care threat. A third voice. He took money out of that tip jar. I watched him. Witnesses. Light. Brent's eyes darted around, searching for silence. But silence had started to break. Darius looked at Brent. You're fired, he said. Effective immediately. Brent's mouth twisted. You can't. Darius didn't raise his voice. You will leave this building right now, Darius said. Or you will leave in handcuffs. Brent's eyes flashed with rage. You've abandoned this place. Brent spat, mask fully off now. You went on stages playing savior. I ran this diner while you chased applause. Darius's jaw tightened. You ran it by crushing the people I built it for, Darius said. That's not running. That's exploiting. Brent sneered. People like them should be grateful for any job. Darius's eyes went cold. My mother built this diner on dignity, he said, and you turned it into a hostage situation. Brent stared, breathing hard, then snatched his blazer off a chair and stormed toward the door. The bell chimed as he left, and for the first time, that sound felt like relief. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Kiana's knees buckled, and Monique caught her. Kiana began to sob, deep, shaking cries that sounded like 18 months of fear leaving her body. Trey stood with fists clenched, tears in his eyes, but refusing to fall. Darius looked at them all. I'm sorry, he said, voice thick. I should have been here. I should have seen it sooner. He swallowed hard. But I'm here now, he said, and we're going to make this right. 3 hours later, Sunrise Spoon was still open, but the air felt lighter, like the ceiling had been raised. In the office, now just an office, not a throne, Darius sat with Kiana, Trey, and Monique. He slid envelopes across the desk. Back pay, he said. Every hour we can prove from those time cards, plus interest. Kiana opened hers and stared. Her hand shook. That's rent, she whispered. That's my kid's school fees. That's breathing. Trey stared at his check like he didn't trust it to be real. Monique pressed hers to her chest, eyes wet. It doesn't erase what happened, Darius said, but it starts the repair. Monique wiped her face. What about the fear? What if someone like him comes back? Darius opened a notebook. We changed the structure, he said, so no one person can do that again. He wrote as he spoke. Transparent scheduling and time tracking. Digital. Everyone sees their hours and any edits. No close open shifts unless the employee agrees, with premium pay. An elected worker council with real power over policy, manager hiring, /firing, and vendor contracts. A strict vulnerability policy, using probation, immigration, custody, housing, or any personal situation as leverage equals immediate termination. An anonymous reporting line run by a third party, not management. Regular audits of payroll and tips. Kiana's voice was small. You let us vote on decisions? Darius looked at her. I'm done asking people to trust me because I mean well, he said. I want you protected even if I mess up. Then Darius reached in his pocket and pulled out a worn recipe card. His mother's handwriting. He placed it on the desk, gently, like something sacred. One more thing, he said quietly. Kiana leaned forward, eyes softening. My mother's French toast recipe, Darius said. The cinnamon smell that used to fill this place. He swallowed. It's coming back, he said. We're not cutting dignity to save pennies. Monique smiled through tears. We're bringing Sunrise Spoon back, she whispered. Darius nodded. Not just the menu, he said. The meaning. On a Saturday morning, Kiana walked into Sunrise Spoon holding Miles's hand, Aaliyah beside her. Not for work, for breakfast. They chose the corner booth, the same booth wherein nobody ordered toast and watched truth unfold. Aaliyah slid into the seat with a grin. Can we get the good French toast? Kiana laughed. We can get whatever we want. We're customers today. Monique came over with crayons and coloring pages like it was normal to be kind. What can I get you? Monique asked. Miles didn't hesitate. French toast. Kiana smiled. Please. French toast, please. Miles corrected quickly, proud. From the kitchen came the sound of whisking, butter sizzling, and then cinnamon. The smell flooded the diner like a warm memory returning. Trey stepped out with a plate stacked high. Thick slices, golden edges, powdered sugar drifting like snow, strawberries bright, syrup glistening. Miles's eyes widened. It smells like hugs, he whispered. Kiana's throat tightened. She looked toward the wall by the kitchen. The recipe card was framed there now. Beneath it, a simple sign. Across the room, Darius worked the griddle in an apron, sleeves rolled up, no cameras, no stage lights. Just a man keeping a promise. At the window table sat the black old woman from the morning of the slap. She sipped tea slowly, calm as ever. When Darius glanced her way, she lifted her cup slightly. Not applause, not praise, just acknowledgement. Like good. Now keep going. And Darius did, because the whisper that stopped him cold didn't come to scare him. It came to wake him up, and once awake, he refused to sleep through cruelty again.